My apologies to those of you that are seeing this later this afternoon or this evening via video. I forgot to start the recording until just now. You've just only missed some introductions and so on and so forth. So once again, I apologize. To those of you that have been on, as I started to explain, the way the remainder of this webinar will work is that I will be providing as much information as possible. Some of the straightforward information will cover a number of the questions submitted. There will be other slides that actually are exact questions that were submitted, that were across many of your concerns. I'm doing my best to address as many of the questions that were submitted as possible in both ways. If at the end of this there are still a number of questions that were unanswered, you can certainly reach out to any of the three administrators on the team, myself, Mr. Malika, or Mr. Riccardi, and we'd be more than glad to attempt to answer as many questions as possible that way as well. But hopefully this webinar addresses as much as we possibly can. So the big questions seem to be the learning models and what are they and how do they work, and when can we go in and out of them. So we're going to take a little time in the beginning of this to try to explain the three learning models, and hopefully this will clear up some misperceptions. So the district has decided at this point to start in a hybrid model for the first 2 weeks of school. That was put out via email from me, but actually on behalf of Mr. DiTomaso. It is for the first 2 weeks, which is a trial run. We have, in this building alone, just over 900 students to come in. So by coming in the hybrid model, we cut that down to 450 students approximately to try to test out our procedures and all of the things that we have put in place to make sure that they are working properly, that students are adhering to the different procedures and policies that we put in place, and to truly evaluate what's going on. If all goes well, we may proceed on to one of the other models. But again, that hybrid model is like a test run. You'll be getting communication from me probably daily. You will probably be sick of me with the communication. It may include pictures or little video clips on how things are going. So let me continue on with some explanations. The hybrid model, as I said, we're splitting the building somewhat in half. So you would be in a grouping, either A to L or M to Z, based on your last name. That's how we're cutting that building in approximate half. In that model, the A to L group will be in 2 days a week, and then the M to Z group will be in 2 days a week. The second week of school, when there is actually 5 days, Wednesday, everybody will be remote, and we will be doing the remote model on that day. It also provides an extra day of cleaning for the building. It also allows us to bring both sections, A to L and M to Z, together for full class discussions in a more productive manner. So if you are in school on a Tuesday and your last name is Conti because you're in A to L, the group M to Z will be logging into their classes remotely. So A to L will be in school 2 days a week, but the days that they're not in school, they will be logging into their classes remotely and following their regular bell schedule, the regular 9 periods schedule, the regular times, and they will be attending their classes virtually. Attendance will be taken, and instruction will be live for those students. If all goes well in those first 2 weeks, hopefully on Monday, September 21st, we would move to the full in-person model on the 21st, where all students, A to Z, would be in school 5 days a week. Obviously, if there are no holidays, it's 5 days a week. And students would follow their regular 9-period bell schedule at that time. But again, that's all predicated on everything working in the first 2 weeks properly. Our third learning model is our alternative virtual learning, or AVL, just for abbreviation as we move on into the PowerPoint. It just got to be too many words. So the alternative virtual learning model, any student can, any family can choose to make this a choice for their child, where the student would be staying home each day and not participating in either the hybrid or the full in-person. Students would be home 5 days a week. They would be expected to log into their classes and follow their regular class schedule, but in a virtual manner from home. Classrooms were all equipped with webcams, and students will be able to hear and see what the teachers are sharing with their students in class. There is a possibility at this point we are exploring as a district, based on some questions from parents and teachers alike, about running a parallel remote school where specific teachers that may not be able to return to work and students that have chosen to stay home would be matched up for a potential remote school. This is an extraordinarily difficult undertaking based on the plethora of student choices and courses that they've selected in their schedule to make sure that we are meeting the needs of those students in that remote school possibility. Again, right now, the plan is if you are on the alternative virtual learning model, you would be logging in 9 periods a day to your current schedule and following the bell schedule that takes place in school, and you would be watching what's going on in the classroom that you're scheduled for. There is a possibility that a separate remote school would be created, but that's in the preliminary stages, and as information comes out or becomes available, I will get that out to you as soon as possible. So let's tackle some of the questions that came in about our learning models. One of the first questions, is the school district locked into the current plan? I think by what you heard Mr. DiTomaso say and what I've said so far, the district is not locked into any specific plan. We have a plan in place as it is now to start with the hybrid and move to the full in-person in a 2-week period, but we are not locked into anything. Things seem to change, and the information I'm giving you right now is all determined and current as of 11/23 on today. So things do change with the CDC and the Department of Health. Things might change based on how students adhere to what we put in place and how everything seems to be going. So no to that, we are not locked into a current plan. Can we change to the alternative virtual learning after school starts? The answer to that is yes, simply put, yes. If you've chosen not to do that at this point, but after the first week or so, you don't feel comfortable sending your child to school, whether it's in hybrid or in the full 5-day in person, and you'd like to choose the alternative virtual learning at that time, we will certainly be sending a second survey out, or we will be gathering that information from you. And of course, you can move to that alternate virtual learning model. Am I locked into my my alternative virtual learning choice? We are asking at this time that if you do make that choice, that you are committed to that choice till the end of the first quarter, the first marking period, which is the first 10 weeks of school. To have students return back into the mix that chose to stay home initially would cause a bit of chaos into what we're trying to create. Based on parents saying they want to keep their children home to the alternate virtual learning choice, We are trying to rebalance classes and try to lessen the load as best we possibly can based on those people that told us that. So we are asking that if you do make that choice to be part of the alternative learning model, that you remain in that model for the first 10 weeks. Will students, I wrote remote, but will alternate virtual learning students be able to ask questions? Absolutely. It will not be as fluid, of course, as those students that are in person, but teachers have been instructed, and it will be a learning curve. Everything's new for everyone, but teachers have been working on professional development to adapt to turning to the camera, making sure that they speak to the students that are learning virtually, and providing them times throughout the lesson where they can ask questions or express the fact that they may just not be getting something, and get direct instruction to those at home that might be struggling with some content at the moment. What will my child see on camera? Students that are learning virtually, that are home, could see a wide variety of things. As I stated, a web camera has been installed in every single classroom throughout the building for these virtual learning possibilities. Some teachers will feel comfortable enough to have themselves being projected onto your home screen. That might be fine, maybe in a lecture type setting, and they'll be talking directly to you. Other teachers may feel the need to share their smartboard screen because that's more important. In that case, you would be seeing what's on their computer screen or what's on their smartboard, while you can hear their audio, you can hear them speaking live. So you would hear the lesson and see what's on the smartboard, much like as if you would be sitting in the classroom listening to the teacher and watching what's being written or displayed on the smartboard. Will attendance be taken for all? Absolutely. Obviously, we need accountability for our students, whether they're in school or at home. So yes, attendance will be taken for all students. So that will be an important portion of any of these models. Why isn't the hybrid 2 consecutive days? Some people ask the question, why don't we have group A come in, let's say Monday, Tuesday, and group B come in Thursday, Friday? The district and all the constituents that came together basically came to the conclusion that if we had students that came into school on Monday, Tuesday, and not return to live instruction till the following Monday, Tuesday, the duration of time, or the long gap in between that live instruction, would be counterintuitive. So not having them in the building kind of could lead to lethargy and different types of things that would distract from education. So they decided that the best way to try to do the hybrid was to have students in the building spread out so the gaps in between weren't as large. Will students be changing classes? Yes. Students that are in the building will be changing classes. It's virtually impossible. I tried a number of different models, but based on student choice and the number of selections that students have here in Belmont Merrick, which makes your children actually extremely fortunate to have, having them stay in one classroom becomes virtually impossible. They would obviously have to go to lunch, they would have to go to gym, they would have to get to a music room or a science room that are very specific, a technology room, a home and careers room. Those in and of itself make those classes very specific to the classrooms. So that alone makes it very, very difficult to have students stay in one classroom. Kind of tied into that, will we be creating cohorts? A cohort would be a group of students that all have the exact same schedule. Well, based on the number of selections, and I'm going to run down some of the selections just so you kind of see the magnitude of this. Students here in Belmore American 7th grade have 3 choices in mathematics, 2 choices in science. They have 4 choices in language, 4 choices in music, 2 choices in family consumer science, 2 choices in technology, and 3 choices in their reading and writing option. And that does not include students with special needs that may have services built into their schedule. So creating a cohort with that number of options, there are literally, because I'm a math nerd, there are literally over 1,000 permutations of schedules that can be created here. So creating a cohort becomes extraordinarily difficult with 1,000 permutations of choices to offer our students. Just welcoming to the party is our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, Mr. Michael Harrington. You can probably see him in the screen. He's given us a quick wave. If he wants to jump in at any time, just feel free. Will devices be provided to all students? This question was threaded through quite a number of parent submissions. The short answer to that is no. That certainly sounds harsh, and that's not by any way the way we actually approach things. But we have approximately 5,000 students in our district, and to secure 5,000 devices alone is actually impossible. But more than that, if a family, like we did in the spring, if a family is struggling with access to a device for their child to be learning virtually or in the hybrid portion, please reach out. We have, of course, loaned those devices to families that have a need, express the need. And here at Grand Avenue, you can certainly reach out to the assistant principal, Mr. Christopher Riccardi. He's heading that up. So no, I can't provide one to every single student, but of course, those students and families that have a need, absolutely reach out. We're here for you, and we will absolutely take care of that need for you. Let's move on to some procedures and protocols. So entering and exiting the building is going to be a tricky part of what we have going on here in any of our buildings. So there's quite a few things that are going to need to take place. And this is where our partnership and the trust that we've built together is paramount. You're putting your trust in us, and we're putting our trust in you with some of the things that need to take place. We have a screening app, and I'm grabbing my phone, not because I just got a text, but because I'd like to show you something. Each morning, even now, as the administration, secretarial staff, and custodial staff enters the building, as we enter the building, we actually log on to a website and answer some screening questions. Once we've completed those screening questions and submitted it, we get something like this, which gives us clearance and the color of the day, so we're allowed to come in the building. As we walk in, we show this screen that has our name, the date, and the color of the day to our security person at the front door. Once he sees that we've answered the screening questions and we have the proper color of the day, he then takes our temperature. If our temperature is under 100, does not exceed 100 degrees, we're then allowed to proceed into the building. So that screening app or that screening website is going to be part of the daily routine for students and staff as well. So we're going to need your assistance with that. Of course, to answer those screening questions, we would prefer that parents answer those questions with their children, whether it be on their smart device or if they print out that question each day, or they could, if they don't have somebody doesn't have a smart device, a child doesn't have a smart device, they can answer those questions on site here. So we have thought of all of those issues. But answering those questions is important. I'm going to run down those questions real quick, just so you just have an idea, so it's not a mystery. These questions have come through from our Department of Health and CDC and such, and that we didn't just create these as a district. Have you had any COVID-19 symptoms is question 1. Question 2, have you had a positive COVID test within the last 14 days? Question 3, contact with someone with COVID in the last 14 days. Number 4, have you traveled internationally? I feel like I'm doing a top 10. Number 4, have you traveled internationally or from a state with widespread community transmission within the last 14 days? And I'm sure we will be getting those communities to you or states to you, so you know how you're actually answering that question. Do you have a temperature of over 100 degrees Fahrenheit? So they are 5 simple questions. You click through, you get the color of the day. It would make life extremely easy if each student arrived to school with that screen on their phone. They could just hold it up. We would take their temperature and they would proceed in. But again, we could do it on site if necessary. So as I mentioned, once the questionnaire is completed and they're entering the building, we're going to be taking temperatures upon entry. We have purchased a new style temperature checker. I'm going to throw my glasses on so I can actually read this bulletin that was provided for me, since I can see nothing anymore without my glasses. We have a non-contact wall-mounted infrared temperature measurement. So it's a small device that will be mounted to the wall. There will be several at each entrance. As students walk in and show us the color of the day or they answer their questions, they will walk up to one of these devices that will be mounted within the building at the entrances that we have students coming in, and they will hold their wrist up to the device. They do not have to touch the device. They do not have to touch anything. It is contactless, and it is quite accurate based on all of the guidelines and information provided through that. Its claim is that we can get approximately 50 students through in about a minute with an accurate temperature reading. So they have their screen, they walk over, do their temperature, and then they proceed into the building. Answering yes to any screening question or displaying symptoms upon entry will basically require students and or staff to follow up with a healthcare provider. And that's the guideline that we have from the Department of Health at this point. Follow up with a healthcare provider. The healthcare provider at that point will determine if you need to get a COVID test. And if that's required, then obviously you will not be able to enter the building until the COVID test is back, based on your health provider's recommendation. Or the healthcare provider may provide you a note to say that it was your allergies or whatever they deem it to be, and then you can return back to school the very next day. Obviously, hand sanitizer. That will be at all the entrances, and you'll hear me probably talk about it at slide after slide after slide. Of course, as we're entering the building, anything we've touched on the way, we'd like to try to kill any germs on our hands as we continue in the building and as many times throughout the building. So there'll be stations in the building to do that as soon as you walk in as well. Please note, obviously, there's a lot more that will go into our entry and dismissal information. I will be communicating with you about that, very detailed in an email as we get closer to school and as we finalize some of these procedures. So please, please, please be on the lookout for that communication as we move forward. As we continue with our procedures and protocols, we have to obviously travel through the hallways. We talked about students moving throughout the hallways, whether it be in the morning or between periods. We're going to be asking students to stay to the right. This will actually provide a 6-foot spacing in between the students that are traveling in opposite directions in the hallway. We will have markings on the floor with arrows that say which direction they should be going on which side of the hallway, obviously the right side. So there'll be arrows, and within the arrows it will say stay to the right. It will also kind of create lanes. So we're going to have those markings pretty much every 10 feet, kind of like a white dotted line on a road to separate lanes, and that will indicate to students where they should be staying to the right-hand side. Because we're staying to the right-hand side and we're trying to maximize the space in hallways, obviously we cannot have locker use. So lockers will not be distributed or assigned this particular year. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But having students not congregated or going to their lockers provides a much wider space in the middle of the hallway to provide for social distancing. We have designed, and in the middle school here, we've always had some up and down staircases, and we've designated a few more to be up and down staircases to minimize any potential for students to be close and to maintain that distance. They will be clearly marked. There will be arrows. They will say up and down. It will be very closely monitored by staff and security. But we do have to do that to of course, provide the maximum amount of distance we possibly can for social distancing reasons. I spoke earlier about not being able to create cohorts where students stay in their classrooms, and in most cases, it doesn't, our schedule and choices don't make sense to be able to do that. It is impossible with the permutations. However, here in the middle school, we do have the luxury where students have been assigned to a humanities block where they would have English and social studies one way or the other, but back to back, and they have the same teachers. So for the humanities blocks, that particular portion of their schedule, they will stay in the same classroom for 2 consecutive periods. By doing so, that removes in the lowest period 100 students from traveling in the hallway. That's a significant reduction in student traffic in the hallway in our 200 even wing, which tends to be one of our most congested hallways. So removing the 100 students from that hallway is quite significant. So for their humanities block period, they will remain in the same class for 2 periods, and the teachers will switch and go across the hall. We are working towards grade level bell transitions. So what does that sound like? It sounds strange, I'm sure. A grade level bell transition would be where we actually ring a bell and have 7th grade students travel through the hallways, go to class, and then subsequently ring a second bell for 8th grade students to travel through the hallway and get to class. Again, this will decrease the number of students. So if we remove 100 students because of their humanities block, and then we cut the remaining number of students in half by doing grade level passing, again, it cuts down the number of students in the hallway and increasing the distancing that we can provide for students. Obviously, we're going to be promoting keeping your distance. This, of course, is where we have to be working together. You know, at home and here, everyone has to be on the same page about preaching. I hate to say the word preaching, but talking to students about the need for social distance and why it's important, not only just for your own safety, but for the safety of your family and your loved ones and maybe your extended family. But again, we have to be on the same page with the distance. Please, 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 you know, we have an excellent partnership. I really value that partnership, but that's one that certainly has to be assisted at home as well as enforced here at school. Classrooms. A number of questions have come in about our classrooms and what they will look like and excuse me, what might be in there. We have, again, here comes the sanitizer. Sanitizer dispensers have been installed on the walls inside every single classroom in our building, as well as in hallways, sporadically through hallways at a decent distance. So they're on the entries, they're in hallways, and they're in every single classroom, including cafeterias and the gymnasiums. So the procedure would be where students actually hit the sanitizer on the way into class, clean their hands off, they take a seat, and they can hit the sanitizer both again on the way out before they proceed to the next class. On each desk will be a barrier, the plexiglass barriers. I think some of you may have explored this already. It is a thin see-through type plexiglass barrier that again creates a space, a cubby, if you will, a 3-sided rectangle with the little extensions that kind of come off the sides to create a little bit further barrier off the desks on the sides to, again, further assist keeping that distance and adherence to the CDC and Department of Health guidelines. Masks need to be worn at the minute they get onto the bus or the minute they step onto our property. Masks by staff and students alike have to be worn. This is a non-negotiable at this time. Wipes will be provided in every classroom. If a student wants to wipe down their desk, of course, they can grab a wipe and wipe down their desk. We've maximized the spacing in classrooms. So we've actually removed any ancillary furniture from classrooms. Teachers that had extra tables or bookshelves or cabinetry or extra file cabinets. Sometimes there were 2 and 3 teacher desks in a classroom. Everything has been removed. The classrooms are now streamlined to have 1 teacher desk, a file cabinet, and a small computer cart to maximize the space that we would have for our students to increase the spacing that we have for them. The CDC and Department of Health guidelines at this point are either a 6-foot spacing or students must have masks and barriers. So since in classrooms we won't be able to, especially at a full opening, have a full 6 feet in between every single chair, we have adhered to those guidelines, strict guidelines from the CDC and Department of Health, and placed barriers and will be requiring masks. So it's masks and barriers or 6 feet. Started to touch on this, masks and face coverings. I did mention all faculty, staff, and students must wear a face covering. Those face coverings must cover your nose and your mouth. And if a student, for some reason, loses it during the day, which I don't know is possible if they're not taking it off, if they forgot to bring it and they hopped out of mom or dad's car and they didn't have it, we do have, we've secured thousands upon thousands of disposable masks like such that we can certainly distribute to any student that doesn't have one. Again, this is where our partnership is going to come certainly in handy. The way I'm thinking about the face coverings, and I'd like to approach our students about the face coverings, is not that it's a punishment or a mandate. I much rather would think about this more of trying to create a culture of something akin to what we do for Relay for Life. If you're familiar with Relay for Life, it's an all-night event where students or people walk the track, and there's luminaries, candles that line the track, trying to raise money for the awareness of different types of cancers. And on each bag, people write, "I'm walking for," and it may be grandma or a friend or a loved one that might be been afflicted with a particular kind of cancer. But if we can possibly work towards that type of empathy in the promotion of wearing a face covering, I think we'll be much more successful in getting our students to wear their masks. I'm wearing my mask. On a personal note, I wear my mask because my dad's pretty sick with stage 4 cancer, and I don't want to bring anything home to him and be that final straw that takes his life. I wear a mask for my children, not to bring it home to my own children. And I'm sure each family has their own story as to why they want to keep their kids safe and why they would hope that their child wears a mask and those around them wear a mask. So if we tackle this in a compassionate way where we tap into the empathy and true understanding as to why we're asking people to wear face coverings in this building, I think we will be much, much more successful. Bathrooms. We have created a schedule to provide cleaning for bathrooms. It is pretty simple here in the middle school. We have 4 distinct wings, but in each wing we have a bank of bathrooms for both boys and girls. For those of you 8th grade should know, we have an odd hallway and an even hallway on each floor. So very simply put, during odd periods, odd wing bathrooms will be open. During even periods, even wing bathrooms will be open. In those periods where those bathrooms are closed, our custodial staff will go in there and sanitize those bathrooms. So they will be cleaned approximately 5 times a day, providing yet another way to try to put another layer of keeping things sanitary and secure and safe for all of our students and staff. Security and teacher aides, teachers will be assigned to those bathrooms each period, so we can trace who's going in there. It will also limit the number of people to go in there. We certainly don't want 15 students going to the bathroom at the same time. That will defeat the purpose of all of the spacing and procedures that we put in place. So we will be taking the names of students that go in, just to make a list by period, in case for any reason we need to alert anyone at a later date, so we can secure that information for tracing purposes if asked by the Department of Health later on, but also to limit the number of students that are in those bathrooms at each given time. A number of questions about backpacks and drawstring bags. 8th grade parents kind of know that we really try to push to move our students to drawstring bags. Of course, in this particular year without lockers, that may not make sense. So obviously we are going to allow backpacks and drawstring bags in the building. We do ask, of course, that we try to refrain from the backpack that looks something akin to something you would take on a hike up Mount Kilimanjaro. It should be minimalized at best. We are talking with every single teacher, and we are coming up with supply lists that subjects will be sharing. Talking about an AM binder and a PM binder, some pens, pencils, and a calculator, and maybe a folder or two, to try to really streamline what goes on, and bringing those materials home and maybe weekly emptying it into a folder at home, so they're not carrying multiple things back and forth to school. If they happen to have a textbook distributed, we're going to ask them to bring those home and keep it at home as much as possible. That way, again, students aren't asked to transport extra unneeded items. So we're going to do our part to try to minimize what students have to carry. Of course, if you could work with us to try to minimize the size of the drawstring bags or backpacks that you're going to purchase, if you so choose. Again, you hear me say it all the time, working together on this will be super important. So we'll try to minimize. If you could try to minimize as well, it will all work out. Continuing with our questions on procedures and protocols. What if my child doesn't have a phone to complete the screening? I did touch on this. If your student doesn't have a smart device that they bring to and from school, there are 2 ways that we can handle that. You could print it out. If you have a computer and printer at home, you could fill it out with a piece of paper, a hard copy, or when your child gets to school, they can answer those questions on site. However, again, for those of you that do have smartphones, having students have that color of the day and having those questions answered ahead of time will ease the entry procedure and keep spacing, and it just will make things run so much smoother. So those of you that do, that would be great if you could get that done and do it with your children. And those that don't, we can do it in one of those other 2 manners. Who's going to be doing the screening? Anyone I can get. No. Obviously, we have a pretty big undertaking, especially when we come back full. Like I said, approximately 900 students, minus those students that choose the alternative virtual learning model. So we will have administration doing it. We have extra security staff coming in. We do have 2 nurses assigned to the building that will be helping us take temperatures and screening. We will have our athletic trainer that's assigned to the building also here in the morning helping us. And there may be our athletic coordinator for the building helping us, and possibly a few other staff members doing that as well. Many hands make for light work, so we are going to get adults to do that. And they will all be trained on how to do so. What device is being used for temperatures? I did mention that scanner. If for some reason any one of those scanners go down, we do have backup handheld contactless. I hate to say it, but they kind of look like the little guns. You kind of see them all over the place now. But the contactless ones that are handheld as a backup. So if those devices go down or aren't working for some reason, we have the handheld ones as well. People in the hall, will people be in the hallways monitoring masks and distance? Absolutely. Our administrative team, teachers, and security staff will be in the hallways monitoring mask usage and distance. Masks, as we said, are non-negotiable. Students will be spoken to, and if any student has been spoken to more than once, parents will be called and could very quickly be asked to go to the alternative virtual learning model if they cannot adhere to wearing a mask throughout the day. So there will be a pretty strict and hard line held on that. So please, again, if we go to it with the empathy approach where they're choosing to wear the mask to keep themselves, their families, and their loved ones safe, rather than it being punitive, I think that will be much more successful and we won't have to get to that point. So that would be, of course, the way we'd like to go. What happens to those that remove their mask? I just kind of touched about that. Again, if it was a brain fart for an instant, of course, they'll be spoken to. But again, if it becomes more than a few times, then they will be asked to go to the alternate virtual learning model. Who will clean the desks and barriers between class? This came up a ton on the survey. Unfortunately, with the number of students, if we have approximately 900 students, we would have at least 1,000 desks. So in the transition between periods of only about 4 minutes for each grade, to do so, it is impossible for staff to clean 1,000 desks in that time frame. So the procedures that we put in place and everybody doing their own part is super, super important with this. So the sanitizing in and out on classrooms, the wipes being provided if a student wants to wipe down a desk, if a parent wants to send their child in with their own specific kind of wipes, they can certainly do that. They can carry it in their little bag and they can use those in between periods. If we're wearing masks and there's really no reason to be touching, nor with the mask controlling what is coming from our mouths, there's really no reason to necessarily clean the barriers. But again, anyone can choose to do so. We would not stop anyone from cleaning that barrier if they chose to do so. I wish I had 1,000 people to run in and clean those at that kind of speed, but unfortunately, it's just not realistic to be able to do that in such a short period of time. So it is going to be a responsibility for all. I did mention this. Can my child bring their own wipes? Absolutely. I can't provide certain types of wipes to children, but we have gotten the green light from the state that if a child brought in their own specific kind of wipes that you seem to want to have, then they can certainly bring those with them. When can my child take a mask break? Pretty much throughout the day. If a child simply asks a teacher, they're getting antsy in class, their face covering is bothering them, and it's not during passing, so the hallways would be empty. If they'd like to step into the hallway for a quick minute just to take a little break, then simply ask. We're going to ask our teachers to be understanding. Students would have to go out there one at a time, so it's certainly not a congregation in the hallway or a means to just get out of class to talk to a friend. And they would have to stay close to the classroom. During lunch, obviously, they're going to have to take their masks off. Those times during lunch and possibly PE, when they're at a safe distance outside, they can take their mask off. And we're also looking at alternate times where we might be able to provide additional times for students to take their masks off. But it will be structured We can't just allow students and staff to take mask breaks when they see fit. It does have to be in a much more controlled manner, obviously, to keep everyone safe. Some questions, or a good number of questions, came in about technology. Those of you that are here as 8th grade parents, you know that we use Infinite Campus for attendance and grading, and that will continue. So if you have not updated your information on Infinite Campus, whether it be telephone numbers, emails, emergency contacts, or anything of the like, please enter into your Infinite Campus account and update that as soon as possible. That information is, of course, more important than ever with contact information. As far as our teaching platforms and what teachers are going to be using in class, we are moving towards a single platform of the Google Classroom. Is the primary platform that we're using for accessing classwork. Teachers may use additional platforms, but Google Classroom will be the primary usage. However, those extra type programs or things that certain teachers may use, we do have a single sign-on this year. So as a student enters into their Google Classroom space, they will automatically be logged into those other spaces as well, to make things exponentially easier. In the spring, trying to coordinate different platforms or different software applications became very tricky for students and confusing to parents. So a single sign-on application has been deployed throughout the district through our technology office. So we sign in one time and we would get signed into all of those different platforms to make it much easier for students and staff and parents alike. Technology frequently asked questions and resources are available on the district website to support students and parents' questions and concerns. If you haven't been to our district website recently, it certainly is an excellent place for information or access to information, whether it be about our COVID response and the different things that we're putting in place throughout the district, or technology and such. So please, if you have further questions, please go there and take a look. There's FAQs, different emails that were sent out, correspondence and communication. Excellent resource on our district website. Questions that came in about health and nurses in particular, identifying signs and symptoms. Just so you know, throughout the district in all 5 of our buildings, all nurses have been trained at the Johns Hopkins Symptoms Recognition and Training course. They've all had to take this course to recognize that, to somewhat lead through what might be presented to them this year, which is exponentially different than any other year. So we made that a requirement for our nurses to get trained in that course. We will absolutely be following all CDC and Nassau County Department of Health. I'm starting to get sick of acronyms. But that's the Nassau County Department of Health guidelines. We've provided PPE and cleaning products for our nurses to continue to provide a safe place for students. There will be the need for the first time for potential isolation. So in each of the 5 buildings, there has been designated an isolation room in all buildings. For us, it would be a room directly across the hall from the nurse's office. That way, our nursing staff can monitor both locations, since we do have 2 nurses, and it is local to all of the supplies that we may need if we need to isolate a student that either is presenting symptoms throughout the day, or answered yes, or had a temperature, or a number of different reasons where we may want to isolate a student or a staff member to minimize any potential risk for spread of any potential COVID-19 related symptoms. Students trying to, again, limit the access and exposure for people. If a student is going home, and it could simply be for chronic migraines, it could be for anything, could be completely unrelated to everything that we're talking about. but students will be walked outside this year for parent pickup. We'll have you sign your child out through that means to limit the number of people that come into the building when picking up a child from the health office. So again, limiting the exposure of the people here and you from potentially coming into the building. Some questions and answers related to the health and nurses. Will everyone be informed when a student is sent home with symptoms? The short answer to that is no. Anyone designated with a potential symptom, until we have any confirmation that an individual symptom is actually related to COVID, we certainly can't start alerting the masses, so to speak. And there are HIPAA regulations in doing so. However, obviously, once we were alerted by the Department of Health, which we will get informed if there is a positive case, we will then, of course, be taking their direction, and we will work extensively with the Department of Health to contact trace and assist them with their tracing to make sure that anyone and everyone that needs to be told is told in a expedient manner. But we will have to work under the Department of Health and CDC guidelines and work with them to do any sort of information. Will the school be contact tracing if there's a confirmed case? I pretty much addressed that in answering the first. We'll be working with the Department of Health, Nassau County Department of Health, and the CDC in any tracing. We'll assist them, whether we need to provide information for where somebody may have been, who else may have been there. If they ask us to help with informing people, we will do that as well. We will do whatever is necessary and anything that we can possibly do as we work with the Department of Health under their direction and guidelines. Who needs to quarantine if there is a confirmed case? Again, it is hard for us to say, and it seems to change a bit day to day. So again, I sound like a broken record. We don't determine who has to quarantine and not. That comes from the Department of Health, and it does come through their contact tracing. Again, we will help them. We will do anything and everything necessary to expedite whatever they need in any way, shape, or form, but we will be using them as the guiding force in that. How long does someone have to quarantine? I'm pretty much going to defer to my answer to the first three questions. If my child is sent home with possible symptoms and is deemed to have something else or not COVID related, what do they need to do to return? I mentioned it briefly earlier. There may be a student that comes down with a potential symptom, maybe not significant, but enough for us to warrant a healthcare professional to dig deeper into what might be causing that. It may be deemed, like I said, to be a migraine or any number of things, could be allergies, could be anything else. We want a healthcare professional to determine that, not us. So we would ask that if a child is sent home with possible symptoms, that they see a healthcare professional. That healthcare professional will deem it necessary or not for a COVID test. If a COVID test is warranted, a student would stay home until such time as the COVID test was returned with a result. If the healthcare provider deemed that child not to need a COVID test, they would have to provide a note saying that they were safe to return to school. So students sent home would need a doctor's note or a cleared test if the doctor requires a test. Okay, a number of questions came in about lunch and how we're going to handle lunch. Lunch obviously is pretty tricky. We feed approximately, if we had everybody here, 300 students per lunch period. We have 2 lunch rooms, which are pretty big in size, but of course, the way they stand now would not adhere to the 6-foot spacing. And 6-foot spacing, especially during lunch, is going to be paramount. We need to make sure that we keep that 6-foot spacing because obviously you cannot eat if you have a mask on. So 6-foot spacing is required to make sure that our students and staff are safe during the lunch period. So obviously our priority is on health and safety. I told you we have those wipes and hand sanitizers in the cafeteria. So we're going to have to use the cafeteria and probably some alternate locations. Until I know specifically how many students are going and families are going to avail themselves of that alternate virtual learning model, it's kind of hard for me to say which specifically I'm going to use. But we may have to put desks in part of the gymnasium. We may have to put desks into our auxiliary gym. We may potentially use our auditorium and split the lunch group in half and send half of our students the first half of the period to the auditorium and have half the students to deal with for spacing to eat, and 20 minutes in have them switch and have it like that. Again, a lot of it is going to be determined a little bit further along when I know more specifically how many students have will be coming back to the building, and I can make a more definitive plan for that. Of course, we have students on good weather days can certainly eat outside. We've brought back recess to students. Traditionally, we used to have students eat inside and then go outside. In this case, we will be allowing students from the beginning of the period to go directly outside for lunch. We will have staff outside to monitor that and to maintain or to ensure that students are maintaining that 6-foot spacing outside if they'd like to sit outside and eat and get that fresh air and get that mask break outside. We are going to encourage that as much as we possibly can. And of course, that is just another alternative for our students during lunch periods. If we are inside and students are in the cafeteria or in one of those alternate locations eating lunch, we're going to have to restrict movement inside. The clusters of students sitting at a specific table is gone, unfortunately. I can't have students walking around and all that extra movement when other students have their masks off and they're trying to eat. So cleanup will probably be designated more towards the end of the lunch period when masks are all back on or as everybody's exiting the cafeteria with a more formal procedure where we used to let students get up and mill about sometimes and throw their garbage away as they finished. We're going to have to restrict that movement to ensure that everyone stays safe. With that being said, tables will be marked for where 6-foot spacing will be located, and there is a potential that we may move desks in there and remove the tables to ensure the 6-foot spacing. So there's a potential for a couple of different ways to look at our cafeterias, but we will do whatever is necessary to ensure that our students are at that 6-foot spacing. A number of questions came in about food. Of course, every family has the right to bring in their own lunch from home. Actually, this year more than ever, this year more than ever, I'm going to encourage families to send their children with lunch. It is proof positive a way for you to ensure that you have control as to what your student is eating, touching, and ingesting. It will also significantly lessen the burden of students that need to get to the location to grab their lunch if they choose to buy lunch. There is an option for students to buy lunch that is still available to all of our students. This year it will be called, it's kind of being rebranded to what we're calling a grab and go lunch. They will be prepackaged meals. Our staff here will be making them. It's not like we're buying a prepackaged thing from a company, but they will be packaging a sack lunch, if you will, for students to grab and go directly to their seating location. We can't have long lines. We can't have that hot lunch line that we used to have. Obviously, offerings will be dramatically decreased. There may only be 2 choices on the grab and go, or it will be decreased. There are some some warmer items that they believe they can get away with, but there may be some, a good number of cold lunch items in those grab and goes. As more information with that comes, I will certainly get it out to you. But again, I would strongly suggest as many parents providing lunch for their children to bring from home as possible. That way we could decrease the number of students trying to avail themselves of that grab and go option, and decrease any congestion that we may possibly face in the cafeterias. Physical ed. A number of questions have come in on PE. Of course, on good weather days, we're going to have students outside. We're not even going to have them in the gym. We're not using lockers this year, so there's no need to change. There's no need to go into congested locker rooms. Students, in fact, on good weather days, will report directly outside to their teacher in a designated area. We will, of course, go through that procedure with our students, either before school starts or the minute they get here, so they know where to go and how to handle that. But they're going to meet outside. Their attendance will be taken outside, and then they will proceed to a designated area where the appropriate spacing during perspiration and high respiration, they have the appropriate spacing outdoors. So they'll report directly outside to the teacher. They make sure that they are appropriately spaced, and then they're going to be participating in fitness activities. Certainly those contact sports that might have been played previously will not be able to happen this year. So our PE department has been working endlessly over the summer to kind of reimagine what PE may look like. So they'll probably be working a lot more with some fitness for life activities. I mentioned earlier, no gym locker usage or changing. And then a number of varying questions came in about sports, after school sports. Right now, we have things pushed off till September 1st, as per New York State and Section 8, which is the county's governing body for sports. Those are not district level decisions. We have very little input on that decision. As things change, if we are proceeding on the 21st or they are moving into an alternate model, maybe in the winter or spring, as soon as that information comes live to us from New York State or Section 8, we will, of course, get those final decisions to you as soon as possible. During inclement weather, obviously, I'm sure everybody looked at that grade. It's in good weather, the kids are doing that. During inclement weather, obviously, we're going to have to keep the kids inside. I can't send kids outside in the monsoon and try to get kids sick. Or if it's 20 degrees out, if we get to, we get to that point, it's going to be great, which I'm going to be thrilled. But we may be inside the gym with spacing or in the auditorium, or if there is too many students in gym for that or assigned to that gym period, I may have to use the gym and the auditorium to ensure spacing. So we may have a mixture of both, dependent upon period and how many students are assigned during that given period. And again, they'll participate in Fitness for Life activities or lessons about Fitness for Life. And again, our PE teachers are fabulous. Mr. Cavallero, heading up that department district-wide, is a really innovative leader, and they're coming up with excellent ideas for our students that are not only here in the building, but at home as well, to make sure that both groups are going to participate in some sort of fitness type activity, whether it's actual activity or learning about or a mixture of both. The innovation and creativity in that group of true educators has been inspiring. So look out for that. There's some good stuff happening. Performing arts questions that seem to have come in. Performing arts, we're talking about our music program. Band, we'll start with band specifically. Because of the nature of that type of performing art, dealing with trumpets and woodwinds and brass instruments and such, where you would have to remove a mask to participate. A 12-foot distance at our current recommendation is required. So fitting into one band room for certain classes does not seem to work with a 12-foot spacing. However, using some creative modeling and under the direction of Ms. Cheryl Fontana, our Director of Fine and Performing Arts, we've come up with a pretty creative solution where here in the middle school, our vocal music room and our band room are directly next to each other with some double doors in between. So we will space the students out between the two rooms, having a teacher assistant in the alternate room, and a teacher and the teacher's assistant can alternate between the two rooms. We will simulcast into the secondary classroom, since each classroom will have a camera installed, so students can be spaced and simply be working in two rooms that are directly next to each other simultaneously, while providing spacing and the appropriate supervision to make sure that students remain on task. I think it's a really creative and an excellent way to maintain our commitment to the performing arts that this district has kind of entrenched itself in for forever. It's something that you should be very proud of and something that we work hard to hold on to. Vocal music, again, because the guidelines right now are telling us that a 12-foot spacing is required. Vocal music classes have been relocated to the auditorium, using that much larger spacing between the pit area, the stage, and the seating area. We will be able to provide some 12-foot spacing, and certainly be able to provide an enriched vocal music program to our students. Orchestra, much like band, however, because masks can be worn during orchestra, a 6-foot spacing is required. In most cases, we will be able to fit our students in a 6-foot spacing model into our vocal music room, which is where we generally hold our orchestra program. So we will do that in cases where that's not based on enrollment in that particular period. We may overflow back into the band room and do the same model for band, but we're pretty confident at this point that we probably won't have to do that. But again, as the numbers come in with families participating in the alternative virtual learning model, that will be solidified shortly. Transportation and busing, also a hot topic threaded throughout the survey. Buses are still provided to those living more than 1 mile. I just want to be clear on that. Just because we're in COVID doesn't mean that everyone gets a bus, but those students that normally traditionally would be a bus would be availed to them because they exceed 1 mile, it will certainly be provided to them. The buses will be sanitized before and after every single route. That's something that has been talked about with our bus company ad nauseum. Masks will be mandatory. Once you step onto a bus, you are on school property. I would strongly suggest that parents have students wearing masks at the bus stop, not just when they step onto the bus. The bus stop is technically part of being in school. And again, if we get kids to believe that wearing the mask is to protect themselves and others, and it's for a positive reason versus a negative reason, I think we can be more successful. But we would, of course, want parents to assist in that. Windows will be left open, at least partially, to make sure that there's adequate airflow throughout the bus, versus keeping the windows closed and it being an enclosed capsule. As students board the bus, the first few students, we're going to be filling those buses from the rear towards the front, and then when they exit, they will exit from the front towards the rear, thereby once again limiting the amount of proximity that we possibly can on the buses. Siblings will be encouraged to sit together. Again, we would need your assistance with this if you have multiple children, both attending Grand Avenue or triples as many students that could sit together coming from the same household will decrease the need for spacing. Mr. Tom Volpe is our Director of Transportation. He resides over at our central office. As he provides bus totals, I have some questions we're asking how many are on a bus. I don't have that information right at this moment, but as soon as he provides us with bus totals, a survey will be going out and further communication about transportation with procedures that are completely solidified will be coming from his office. So as soon as I get those, the minute I get it, you will have it. As we look ahead, communication, please, 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 please look for emails. Look for hard copy mails that get sent home. Just look for communications. Please read the communications thoroughly. They're sometimes lengthy. I know they're lengthy. I'm sorry. There's a ton of information we're trying to get out there. But a lot of times we're getting some emails and questions being asked that are actually in either our FAQs or emails that we're sending out or communications that we send out. And it would lessen the load of trying to get that information back to you. And I could get through it a lot quicker if everybody's kind of reading what is being disseminated as much as possible. I mentioned the site. Please read the district COVID site for information. If you click on the Belmont Merrick website, there's a scrolling banner that it's in red. It says COVID related. I forget exactly what it says. But if you click on that scrolling banner related to COVID, it brings you to a page with a plethora of information that we've been dealing with as we've been going through this pandemic, including updated FAQs and so on and so forth. So please refer to that as much as possible. Most importantly, I know, I'm sending a ton of stuff. Please try not to get sick of my emails and simply hit delete when you see Carlo Conti from Grand Avenue. Please open that email and read through it as diligently as possible so we can get that information. Listen, despite everything that's going on, this part of the year or part of the summer, it breeds excitement. It breeds excitement into teachers and kids and administrators. I'm like a big baby myself. I love the start of the year. I love the start of something new and a new year and being able to shape and mold that. While I certainly don't welcome the situation that we're in under a pandemic and the restrictions and the way that we're doing it, it's still a great opportunity for a great year. And we can do this together. We always have done this together. This community is amazing. What you guys accomplish and what we do together as a school and community partnership is nothing short of miraculous. And that's why this school district and this community is so widely sought after for people to move to. So I welcome that partnership. I do please, that third bullet down, I do please beg you to refrain from the negativity on social media. The negativity certainly doesn't help foster any true change. It just breeds more negativity. If there are questions or concerns, we are here and we will work with you and we will try to address every single thing. I know there's so many different opinions out there as to what everybody believes is the right decision to go with. And as a district, we're making decisions for approximately 5,000 students, and we are doing our absolute best to make the best decisions for kids and their education while following the guidelines that are set forth by our governor, by the CDC, by the Department of Health, and 27 other governing organizations that have infiltrated our decision making. So we are truly working tirelessly to try to do the best we possibly can to provide your children with the best possible educational experience that they can have. I thank you for tuning in to today's webinar. I look forward to answering any further questions if necessary. And again, together we are going to make this work. Thank you once again, and have a great day.